What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the CRKT, or Columbia River Knife and Tool Helical. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is a Ken Onion design knife. This knife was provided by the Pass Run Group, so by extension the manufacturer CRKT. I appreciate that. I'll try not to let that affect my review. If after this review you decide you'd like to have this knife for yourself, you can use my Amazon affiliate link down in the description. Anyways, let's go ahead and get some measurements here. Hey, by the way, did you guys know that I have Instagram? I have Instagram. Give me a follow. I'd really appreciate it. Overall length from tip to scale, we're looking at about 8.1 inches. Very long, slender looking knife. From tip to scale, we're looking at 3.5 inches. And the actual cutting edge, you're looking at just slightly under 3.5 inches, about 3.4 inches. So very typical build, very medium, large size knife. How about some size comparisons here up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So the Rat 1, a little bit longer, but quite a bit more robust or tall in appearance. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall, just a hair longer and again a little bit taller, more robust looking. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches, so about the same length, but again slender build, making it appear a lot more slender. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. So this knife is a medium size or medium large size knife with a normal, in my opinion, a normal size blade, 3.5 inch blade, but a long, slender, sort of stabby, pokey appearance. What we have here on the anatomy is a D2. Yep, you heard me correctly. D2. Does it say? No, it doesn't. CRKT, this is a D2 knife. It should definitely say. I just want to say that real quick. We have a Tanto blade, kind of a little bit of belly on the secondary edge. And honestly, is it absolutely straight? It's, I mean, maybe ever so slight curvature down there at the end, but a pretty straight Tanto. On the thickness of the blade, let me go ahead and use my super reliable and very expensive calipers. That's a joke. Blade stock thickness coming in at, yeah, I would say probably 120, 125 thousandths. Not super thick, as it shouldn't be, you know, this size of knife. So that's appropriate. 120 thousandths or so on the blade thickness. You can see there it carries that the robustness that it can out to the tip, or out to about 90% the length of the blade, given that it is a Tanto. It's generally a pretty strong blade shape, so they can get away with that with a thinner stock. Action on this guy. So this knife does have a pretty good detent. You can see there, a little click there, about medium. It's got a flipper tab that's very, very CRK-esque, but it works really well. I mean, it's easy to get traction on it. It's easy to flip. It's very reliable. It has a certain feel to it, and I couldn't put my finger on it until I looked inside here and realized, oh, that's what it is. It's running on nylon, which is something that I used to defend in the past. And I'll tell you, here's what I honestly think. I think most people can go out and use knives just fine with nylon, and it's fine, and it won't be a problem. But they are just notably less durable than both phosphor bronze and bearings. Bearings gunk up, and they're not the most ideal thing in dirty environments. But are they more durable in terms of what could potentially get in there and cause a problem than nylon washers? Physically, yes. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, things can get in there and stop them from working, but as far as like actually destroying the bearings, no. It's more likely that the elements will destroy nylon washers before phosphor bronze. Is it unlikely that will occur? Yes, but it does occur. It's pretty easy to find pictures online of stuff that just got in there and got between the washer and the pivot and just kind of tore it up. CRKT does this with like I think their M16 line, and some builds have a combination phosphor bronze and nylon setup. You do have kind of, it's a unique smooth feeling, a unique hydraulic feeling, but let's just, come on, given the nature of a lot of CRKT knives, I mean, these are knives that are meant for outdoors. I'd really like to see phosphor bronze in there. You know, I used to defend Hinderer for doing that. I'm really, honestly, I'm really glad that Hinderer moved to PB washers or bearings, depending on what you want to do with the tri-way. But this is a much less expensive knife. But in any case, the competition out there, for the most part, at least the really popular competition, knives like the Rat, they are utilizing phosphor bronze, and you won't hear a lot of complaints. I think it will do CRKT a lot of good to move to phosphor bronze on a lot of these models utilizing nylon. Anyways, we have a DLC coated Tanto. I don't know exactly how durable the DLC coating is. It looks very similar to DLC coatings that I see on a lot of knives in this price range. This is a budget knife, by the way, made in China, as CRKT knives generally are, or Taiwan. I can't remember which it is. But in any case, I imagine it'll hold up okay. If you have a Boker Kalashnikov, or you've got an Ontario Rat and it was coated and you've been using it for 5 to 10 years, that's about kind of where I think this is going to end up after a while. That's fine, not a big deal. D2 is not a stainless steel, but it's also not the most corrosion prone steel either, so it's probably going to do it okay. The edge is definitely it's not thin behind the edge. In fact, it's sharp. It's just, I mean, like, this is a Tanto that's not very tall, and it's flat ground. You could imagine this thing is not going to be the most efficient slicer. This is more of a, sort of a knife that accentuates its, ability to puncture. And it's going to cut. It's going to cut okay. It's not going to be the most efficient cutter in the world. Is it going to be a good working tool? Yeah, absolutely. The blade was sharpened in a way that's, good. I mean, it's complete. It's got a complete edge. It just doesn't have a hair splitting or apple skin shaving edge on it, straight out of the box. As far as fit and finish goes, it really does look good and symmetrical all the way around. I got to hand it to CRKT. I really like that they, I like that they're constantly doing different types of models, but they've recognized where the knife world has gone and what people like to see in this price range. They definitely fall in this budget price range, the sub $100 price range with a lot of their models. They definitely have models that are more expensive. They have a ton of models that fall in this price range, and they are clearly paying attention to trends, given that they're using D2 here and it's a flipper with a Detent, it's not assisted. People like to see that. I like to see that CRKT is trying to cater to those folks, and I've always been, I've always had a fairly positive view of CRKT knives, and it's just nice to see them saying, hey, we hear you, we're putting stuff out that I think people will like. I don't like all this mess on the other side. K500 GKP Helical trademark, Ken Onion trademark design, too much, especially when you have white and black contrasting. CRKT, that's fine. It just seems like a little bit much on the other side. Not that big of a deal. You do have absolutely functional jimping here on the back. It does rest a little bit lower because of this bump right here that I think is just an aesthetic. It's kind of part of the natural flow of the finger guard, but it's fine. It's very comfortable. We are rocking 6061 T6 aluminum scales here that have been hard coat anodized, and you can see here there's some texturing that initially led me to believe that this was plastic. Doesn't it look like plastic? It's not. It's aluminum. So that's cool. I was really happy to see that. Aluminum is a material that 6061 is a material that I find a little bit on some of the Pro-Tex and Micro-Tex up there at the $200 mark and a lot of Benchmade's knives. But is it a durable material? Yes. Is it a corrosion resistant material? Yes. Is it appropriate, on knives all the way up to that price point? Yeah. Once we get over $200, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Carbon fiber or titanium might have been a better choice, at least, just the general trends of the knife community, what they like to spend their money on. But at this price point, yeah, I'm perfectly happy with that. Actually, I'm really happy with it. It's been done very well. Nice consistency all the way around, nice rounding off. The inside edges are a little bit sharp, and they kind of have this aesthetic, I don't want to say unfinished. It's just like, it's clearly, just machine cut. It's very apparent, especially with this texturing. It sort of draws the detail in towards those lines. That's not a big deal. That's me being nitpicky. Show side pivot looks good. I like the flow of the lines here. Everything looks nice. We do have the industry standard T6 handle screws. That sucks. Let's get that changed. But they're fine. Not a deal breaker. And there's only 2 of them. They go into a backspacer that I assume is also aluminum and not perfectly flush, but it's okay. It looks nice. The contrast with black and gray looks good. You have a pretty run-of-the-mill deep carry pocket clip that has that nice swoop to it. That's really easy, getting it over the pants pocket, in and out of the pants. This knife is very, very easy to get in and out of the pants. The bill isn't so prominent that I feel like it's going to get caught on something and ripped off. You do have screws that are not recessed into the handle, and it's that setup where it's not, you know, the clip isn't sunk into the handle to prevent play, but it doesn't seem to have any play in it, so that's fine. The screws both do go into the backspacer. I've always liked that design, so I appreciate that. And then you have a simple T8 adjustment side of the pivot on this side. I have no idea if it's captive or not. We have a pretty typical liner lock that, you know, sent to me, it just kind of locks up late. It's locking up, it looks to be about 80%. That's pretty typical of CRKT knives and not necessarily indicative of an issue. My Rat 1, you know, it came just slightly, you know, behind 50%. It's now at about 70% or 75%, and it has stayed there. Sometimes the geometry of the lock face will keep it there. It's not, late lockup is not necessarily a problem, especially at this price point. Now, I don't want to see super late lockup on a knife that costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars, because you know, I like seeing that the maker took the time to pay attention to how much of the lock bar or lock bar insert is actually engaging with the tang, and then the geometry and what it looks like, how it'll age, you know. But on a knife like this, do I care that much? No. I think it's totally fine. It's not a problem. It's just something I normally see from CRKT. The knife did not come perfectly centered, and I thought, well, that might just be a product of other reviewers flipping it over and over and over again. So I tried to tighten it up, and it got to the point where it was so tight that I couldn't flip it, and it still wasn't perfectly centered. It's not really that big of a deal. In fact, I say all the time, my Manix 2, which is right here, came with the centering slightly off. A little bit off. Not that big of a deal. It's not rubbing. It doesn't really, it's annoying, but it doesn't really bother me, and that Manix was a lot more expensive. Once I get up over the $100 mark, you know, even though that Manix 2 was there, that's when it kind of starts to get annoying to me, like really annoying. But is it a problem? No. If it gets to the point where you cannot flip the knife at all without the blade being in a position where it rubs on one side of the handle or another, that's a situation where I'd send it back. A knife of this price range, would I send it back for that? No, I wouldn't. I don't think there's a problem there. There is no blade play up, down, left, or right, so that's fine. Doesn't rub, clicks into place nicely. It's fine. Your situation may vary. You may get one of these with perfect centering. I don't know. It's worth pointing out that despite this having a slender profile with a blade that sinks almost entirely into the handle, which, by the way, I've tried. I cannot quite touch that edge there. I can touch just barely, I can touch this part right here if I really dig my fingers in. Do I think that's a problem? No, I think it's sunk in enough. There's some natural curvature of the handle, and the blade, you know, sort of tapers ever so slightly down to the tip to avoid that being the case. So I think that's fine. The handle scales look a little bit thick on this guy just because of my aesthetic opinions of it this way. I'll put it up against the Rat here. You can see it's still ever so slightly thinner than the Rat. In fact, it might actually be the exact same thickness, but the Rat is so much of a taller knife and a heavier knife. Did we forget to weigh this knife again? We forgot to weigh it. I've been doing that lately. Let's weigh this guy real quick and we'll get back to the thickness thing. 3.53 ounces, which is fine considering we have a 3.5 inch blade. There's no issue there whatsoever. Aluminum is light, so despite the fact that this is not milled out on the inside, you can see there it's solid aluminum except for that sub liner lock there. It's a pretty light knife. It does have some seemingly unnecessary thickness to it. I'm not sure why. It's not really that big of a deal. This knife is very easy to carry. The profile allows it to be super easy to carry. The shape of the flipper tab and the shape of the handle, I mean, the ergonomics are fine. Truthfully, the ergonomics feel pretty good, despite there not being a cutout for the liner lock, which kind of bothers me. I kind of wish there was a little bit of a liner there. These stick up a little bit past the frame, so it's fine. I kind of wish there was just a little bit of a cutout there so I could engage with it as it continues to wear all the way over to the right during its lifespan, but not that big of a deal. Ergonomics are pretty good. I feel pretty locked in because of the handle shape, because of the back here up against my palm, and this area right here I can kind of choke up in that standard position right behind what is clearly a finger guard on the handle. But anyways, the scales they just feel a little bit thick. This knife seems like it should be a little bit thinner. I'm not sure why they couldn't shave these scales down a little bit. They actually appear to be thicker than the knife blade. Is that a deal breaker? No, not at all. It's really not. Overall, again, my nitpicks with this knife are, we have a blade that it's a Tanto, and this is a general EDC knife. It's definitely not a hard use knife, but it's one that's probably geared towards EDC and more sort of work type tasks. The blade's ground in a way that's not going to accentuate slicing performance, but some people really don't care about that. They want knives for different reasons. It's running on nylon washers. I'd rather just see phosphor bronze. The screws are T6, that kind of stinks, but whatever. The pocket clip screws are not recessed. They stick up just a little bit, but it's really not that big of a deal. And then the handle scales are a little bit thick. The price on this guy, it's probably going to vary depending on when you're watching this video, is somewhere around 50, 55 bucks. I think that's a good price for this knife. I don't have a problem with it. There's a lot of really good competition with this knife in this price range. And you know, I think a lot of the little things that I was nitpicking should probably be addressed. I think the biggest two are probably the phosphor bronze and it needing a little bit of a cutout right here. Everything else is pretty good. Honestly, I think the biggest issue with this knife is it just has kind of a weapony vibe to it. It really looks like a stabby. I mean, it looks like it was designed to be a weapon, and I don't know. I don't always like knives like that. It's why I kind of steer away from Tantos, but it doesn't have to be. It's just that's how. I mean, I'm not going to look at it like that from the, you know, seeing somebody else carrying it, you know, being a knife guy, and you guys are going to know, you know, not it's just a tool, but for the vast majority of people who aren't knife people, this just looks like a weapony knife. That's just how it is. You know, if you surround yourself with people who don't think like that, it's not going to be a problem. And of course, if you live in an area where this blade length is not a problem, then you're going to be just fine. Would I recommend this knife? You know, if somebody was looking like for like a long, slender knife, and they're like, yeah, I'm a big fan of aluminum and I'm a big fan of D2, this knife would come to mind. I don't know that it would be my absolute recommendation over a lot of other things in this price range, but if you spend the money on this knife, are you going to be happy with the steel? Are you going to be happy with the fit and finish? Yeah, it doesn't have perfect fit and finish all the way around, but it's pretty darn good. And if you like the aesthetic of this knife, you're probably going to be happy with the money you spent on it. That's pretty much all I can say about the CRKT Helical, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.